Hey everyone, I am here to talk to you today about the solar eclipse that we have taking place on October 14th. This is an annular solar eclipse, a partial solar eclipse. The word annular comes from the Latin word annulos, which actually means ring. And this particular eclipse will have what we know as the phenomenon of the ring of fire. This is not that common of an occurrence, especially for us to see here in the United States. It is going to be visible across many parts of the world, and I'll get into that in a moment, the astronomical technicalities of this eclipse. So I just want to stress that this eclipse is taking place in the sign of Libra, and it is close to the South Node, okay? And the South Node is a point of shedding and release. Now, this solar eclipse is a new moon. New moons always attach themselves to the energy of abundance and bringing in the new and setting intentions. However, because this is an eclipse that is attached to the South Node, there's a very strong energy of release, okay? Releasing the karmic baggage, shedding of the old self, changes coming in. Eclipses act like a wild card, and this is why, especially the ancients, feared them. But there's nothing to be feared. What you can count on is revelations, you can count on epiphanies, potential rerouting, and changes that were already in the making. Eclipses tend to stir up that which has already been there under the surface. If you think about the phenomenon, the actuality, and the symbolism of this particular type of eclipse, let's just talk about that. Let's just get right into that. In order to have a new moon, the sun and the moon have to align. Now, when we have a solar eclipse, what happens here is that the sun, the moon, and the earth have to align. Now, the sun is actually 400 times wider than the moon, but it is also 400 times farther away. So they appear to be the same size, okay? And for this new moon, if you recall, the last moon that we had was a full moon back on September 29th. It was an Aries supermoon, and it was the last moon before the eclipses. And that full moon, it was a supermoon, which means it was at perigee, which means it was at the closest point to the Earth, closest to us, which is why it looked so huge. And it's why the energy was felt so strongly. Now, think about this solar eclipse as, well, it is considered a micromoon. It's actually the exact opposite. It is at apogee, which means it is at the farthest away from the Earth that it can be. It's the farthest away from the Earth's orbit. So as the moon passes between the sun and the earth, what happens is the moon actually appears to be covering the sun. And this is what is responsible for this ring of fire that can be seen. This is why the ancients feared eclipses, because if you think about it, they looked at it as the moon is eating the sun, okay? And that this was something that was evil because the darkness was eclipsing the light for a period of time. The lights go out. It was considered ominous to them. It's not ominous. It's actually an astrological and astronomical phenomenon. But if you think about what eclipses represent, it is a time when something that has been in the dark is brought to light. Now, if you think about this symbolically, for us here, individually and personally, this is going to operate very differently. So if you have anything around 21 degrees of the cardinal signs, which are Aries, Libra, Capricorn, or Cancer, you will definitely feel this eclipse more personally in your lives, more than likely, I should say. And again, if you go to my website, right on the homepage, you can actually click on the free birth chart link, and it will take you to the page where you can generate your birth chart. Again, I have to tell you, I do not write the reports that go with that if you choose to purchase them, okay? You don't have to. You can simply just pop your chart up and see the placements, okay? And you're going to want to look to where 21 degrees of Libra falls in your chart so that you can see where this particular solar eclipse is going to impact your chart, your life. Now, again, for everybody that is going to be different, so take note of that as well. And of any of the changes that are going on in your reality or anything that is coming up for you into your awareness. Like I mentioned, this is an eclipse with a very strong energy of release, releasing the baggage that doesn't serve you, mind, body, spirit, especially where it pertains to relationships and partnerships of all kinds. The sign of Libra is all about relationships. It's all about any kind of relationship that involves a contract, whether it's a written contract, a formal contract, or a spiritual contract. It doesn't have to be that literal. It's any of your connections, any and all of your connections, and most especially the connection to the self. The opposite sign of Libra is Aries, and that is all about the self. So think of it as like, this is me and this is we. And how do I function both in and out of these situations? And there's definitely this energy of where things have been out of balance or out of harmony in your relationships, in your life. And if you are the one who's responsible for the imbalance, it's about owning that. It's about stepping up into your own power, being mature enough to recognize where you could be the villain in either your own story or someone else's. And then, of course, yeah, you can be a victim in certain stories, but it's about dropping that victim mentality. You don't have to stay there. You can stand in your power. You can stand in your truth. You can stand up for yourself. And for some people, this will mean letting go of a situation that is just no longer serving you, where you've tried and you've tried and you've tried and it just hasn't been working for you, whether that's an actual relationship, to a human being, to a person, or to an organization, whatever it is for you, because again, it's going to be different for everybody. But there's just this very strong energy of shedding the skin, okay? And I'm going to show you the chart in a moment and get into that and get into the astrology around this eclipse. But it's powerful. It's very spiritually powerful. And remember, when it comes to eclipses, the energy is not immediate. It unfolds over time. And just to get a little more technical for a moment, this eclipse, the totality of this eclipse, the longest that it will be on its path, okay, is about 5 minutes and I think 17 seconds. In the astrological world, that 5 minutes actually translates into 5 years, which means that, think of this as whatever unfolds is going to be unfolding over a 5-year span of time. It might not be immediate. And especially you're going to want to pay attention to those that are in this eclipse path, which, by the way, is actually most of the United States. So this eclipse will be visible for actually many parts of the U.S., including Central and South America. So we have not seen this particular type of eclipse, just to, again, drive home the point of how rare it is. We have not seen this type of eclipse since 2012. We will not see this again until 2039. And in the United States, we will not be able to see one like this until 2046. So it is a big deal, okay? And again, energetically speaking, literally speaking, you can pretty much guarantee that we will be hearing a lot coming out of the parts of the world over these next couple of years that are a part of this eclipse path, especially Texas, especially Oregon, just to name a few, Mexico. And again, this unfolds over time. And if you go to my blog, I actually have it written out, the path of this eclipse. And by the way, you never look at an eclipse without the proper eclipse eyewear. Please, you will hurt your eyes. Don't do it. You can buy special eclipse viewing glasses on Amazon if you feel so inclined to do so. I also have to mention that we are going to have another eclipse on April 8th of 2024, which will also cross the US. So that eclipse and this eclipse will intersect through Texas. That's where the point of these eclipses are, which is why I said we're more than likely going to be hearing a lot coming out of Texas over the next couple of years. Who knows, what's going to happen. We are under times right now that are mimicking the astrology and the energy of the 1700s, back when the USA was first formed. So, again, we're going to be seeing changes. A lot's going to be going on. We know this already. All right. So again, as I said, personally speaking, this is going to be indicative of changes to come. But again, a lot of times with eclipse energies, things happen, right? Doors slam shut and doors swing wide open. And it's like once that light comes back on, you see something so clearly, something that might have been hidden in the dark for years. And it could just be hidden in your subconscious. It could be hidden in your psyche. And then all of a sudden you get that epiphany, you get that moment, you get that answer, and things shift. And it's nothing to be fearful of, because more than likely these have been changes that have been in the making for you for years. So it's about embracing this energy. It's about moving along with the current wherever it is that it takes you and doing your part. There's a very strong component here with eclipses of fate. Of course, we do have free will a lot of the times, but oftentimes when it comes to eclipses, and again, especially how it impacts your personal chart, fate is a huge part of that deal. And fate will take you so far, but free will make the difference as well. So again, this is Libra. This is weighing out all sides. This is weighing out the options. This is releasing what isn't serving you, moving forward, standing strong in your sovereignty, in your autonomy, not being afraid to erect boundaries where necessary to stand up for yourself differently. I'm sure many of you have been experiencing this in your personal lives. Now, if you want to track this eclipse back timing-wise to see what might have been going on in your reality, and if it is reminiscent of those times, definitely want to look back to 2004 through 2006, which is the last time that we had the South Node in Libra and the North Node in Aries, just to kind of see, was there anything going on in your reality that seems, karmically significant, where it might be mimicking what's happening in your reality now. Not necessarily the same thing, but there could be themes that are similar. So technically speaking, we actually had this solar eclipse at 21 degrees and 6 minutes of Libra back on October 14th of 2004. So the same date, okay? We had this solar partial eclipse, October 14th, 2004 in Libra. And then December 26th, 2004 through, I think it's June, you want to look at what was going on in your reality, because this is the same eclipse energy, basically, the Aries Libra axis, North Node, South Node. And if that's too technical for you and that gets lost on you, don't worry about it. Just feel into the energy of what I am saying. Feel how it lands with you. Don't get so caught up in, North Node, South Node planets. I know it can be a lot. It can be overwhelming. It can be confusing. So try to just take the symbolic or the spiritual meaning and not necessarily the technical planetary stuff. Okay, so this eclipse is a solar annular partial eclipse that takes place on October the 14th, 1:55 p.m. Eastern Time at 21 degrees and 7 minutes of Libra. This is where we have a new moon in Libra. The sun and the moon are aligned at 21 degrees and 7 minutes. And here is the chart for this solar eclipse. All right, so this is the chart for the new moon, the solar eclipse, October 14th, 2023, 1:55 p.m. Eastern Time. I have this set for New York, but obviously if you were looking at the chart, you'd set it for wherever you are in the world. So like I mentioned, there is a lot about this particular eclipse that points out or highlights relationship dynamics and how we function in our agreements, our relationships, our contracts. Again, that's of all kinds: personal, professional, romantic, family, the balance dynamics, the power dynamics. We've got this new moon up here at 21 degrees and 7 minutes of Libra. And again, it's pretty close to the South Node here at 24 degrees and 52 minutes of Libra, which is a really strong emphasis on letting go to grow, okay? On letting go what doesn't serve us and what's not in balance in our lives, what's not in harmony. Again, Libra is the sign of relationships. So, it's just pointing us in that direction. Again, it's driving that point home. Mars is now at the 1st degree of Scorpio, which is really driving up the heat and the intensity, okay? Because Mars in Scorpio is in its power, in the height of its power, and is laser focused and determined and passionate. So your desires are going to be front stage for you, front and center. And so if you try to avoid the way that you feel, it's going to feel more frustrating for you at this time, okay? Because Mars in Scorpio wants you to feel. Mars in Scorpio wants you to direct your energy towards your goals, your desires, what you really want, and not to play it safe. Mars is also in a harmonizing aspect to Saturn over here, Saturn retrograde at 0 degrees of Pisces. So Mars trine Saturn is actually very helpful for setting intentions, setting goals, getting our minds and our hearts right at what it is that we truly want and how we're going to work toward receiving it. So that's actually a very helpful aspect here. But at the same time, Saturn's over here at 0 degrees of Pisces in opposition to Venus up here at 5 degrees of Virgo. Now, this is significant because Venus is the planetary ruler of Libra, which makes Venus the ruler of this eclipse. And Venus in opposition to Saturn, well, first of all, Venus in Virgo is considered to be in her fall. Now, that's not bad. That just means Venus struggles a little bit in Virgo. Virgo is a very practical earth sign, but Virgo is also very sensual. And so with Venus in Virgo, the focus becomes on what makes me feel beautiful, what makes me feel alive. And so I think that's really important to focus on under this energy with Mars in Scorpio. What makes me feel good? What do I really desire? It's about you, not about others. And Venus in opposition to Saturn can just bring up this energy of maybe a little bit of a feeling of like where you've been restricted or where you've been restricting yourself. Where have you been self-loathing? Are you criticizing yourself? What makes you feel unpretty or unworthy? This is likely going to come up under this energy as well. Could feel like a bit of an emotional ouch. I have to take into account that Mercury up here at 17 degrees of Libra is in an almost exact opposition to Chiron down here at 17 degrees of Aries. Chiron is the wound that never heals, the wound that never quits. But also it shows us that the medicine is in the wound and that when we go into those emotional ouches, those emotional spaces where we don't just cover them with a sparkly Band-Aid, sparkly spiritual Band-Aid, that's where the real gold lies, the real karmic treasures. And that is, again, another point of this new moon eclipse. Between the Venus-Saturn opposition and the Mercury-Chiron opposition, don't be surprised if some emotional ouches come up for you. Look at it as glimmers, not triggers. I love that. I read that somewhere and I thought it was really cool. Like that which triggers you, look at it as a glimmer into what still needs to be healed. And I can pretty much guarantee for everybody, something will come up. Even if it's very minor, it could just be, an emotion that you thought you were no longer going to feel regarding a breakup from 15 or 20 years ago. It could be something like that. I happen to know that many people, myself included, have been having very vivid dreams about the past and people from the past that I haven't thought about in, 20 plus years. I often tell my clients it's not necessarily about that person when you dream this way, but it's about the energy attached to the time that you were connected to these people. So think about it that way. It's not necessarily always that literal, but there's something there for you to dig into spiritually about that time in your life. And that's why it's coming up to you in your dream space, it's coming out from your subconscious into the conscious, right? Because that's what happens when we dream. There's always a basis to our dreams. Think about it. Now, eclipses always act like a wild card, okay? They do. We never know what we're going to get with eclipse energy, and that is, again, why they were always feared or thought to be ominous on some level. Not only because the literal happenings with an eclipse, but also the spiritual component to it. And with that said, I have to mention that Uranus is over here at 22 degrees of Taurus. Uranus is currently retrograde at 22 of Taurus in an inconjunct aspect to this new moon, or a quincunx, which is a 150-degree aspect, and it is as funky as it sounds, the quincunx. It takes adjustments, okay? It means things could be a little bit wobbly and or off-center before they get straight. This could be, again, an indicator of upheavals, reroutes, disruption, but it could also be of the best kind, okay? I always say with Uranus that he seeks to leave you better than you're found. And because we're dealing with an inconjunct, that just drives the point of wild card energy that much further. And the other very important factor here for the new moon is that we've got Pluto at 27 degrees, 53 minutes of Capricorn. Pluto's now direct. Remember, Pluto stationed direct just a couple of days ago, right before this eclipse on the 10th. And Pluto has been involved in this ongoing T-square to the nodes of the moon, because we have the nodes here at 24 degrees of Aries and 24 degrees of Libra, both squaring Pluto at 27 of Capricorn, or Pluto squaring the nodes. And now we're going to pull this new moon into this, which actually would bring in a grand cross energy, a tense configuration of these planets. It's kind of wide because they're at 21 and 27, but we're going to count it because Pluto just stationed direct and it's operational. We've got Pluto in a square to this new moon and to the nodal axis, which again just really, really highlights this energy of the future, and that, everything that's happening right now is very indicative of your future. This is why many people feel stressed and anxious and like I have to make changes, and there's a heat to it and a fever to it. And again, Pluto is the garbage man in astrology. That's how I refer to him. What I mean by that is Pluto doesn't leave any stone unturned. Pluto is the planet of power and transformation. It's where we feel most powerless, and it's where we can become most powerful. And that is the point of Pluto. Pluto will deconstruct in order to reconstruct. That is the goal of Pluto. He takes away what is not working, and there's a very strong energy, and I've been talking about this for months now with Pluto, where whatever is not within our highest good, individually and collectively, is going to be stripped away. And that is to build it back up higher, build it back up better, build it back up in a more constructive manner. So look at it that way. The key word for Pluto is permanence. So whatever goes away under a Pluto transit, it doesn't come back. And that is why Pluto is the planet, or one of them, that is associated with death, with physical death. But in this case, it's the metaphorical. It's a metaphorical death, a dying of the old self so that the new can be reborn. Very strong rebirth energy, this eclipse. Not just this eclipse, but these times in general. It's about rebirth, it's about redemption, it's about release, it's about recalibration. And with Pluto, sadness or grief or loss are normally a part of that deal. We grieve for what is gone. That's the way it works. And so that's okay if that what you're doing away with makes you sad, or makes you feel a sense of loss, or makes you flounder for a little while. Pluto's very deep. He goes into the soul. He goes into the psyche. He leaves no stones unturned. So again, this just pulls more focus onto the fact that this is likely why the energy feels so intense right now for you, for all of us actually, and in different ways. positively speaking, it's a great time to make changes within those relationships and contracts that you plan to keep in your life that are working, and that maybe there's just been some miscommunications. This is the time where, you have those conversations, or you can at least start those conversations. You don't have to do it all, remember, in one sitting. You can say something, you can talk about something, and then come back and revisit it at a later date. But it's just the point that you start something. Again, even though it's an eclipse, and I don't like to work with eclipse energy, it is still a new moon. So don't be surprised if new things come in, new opportunities, fated encounters, chance meetings. Honor and integrate these energies as best as you can. Take really good care of the physical body. These energies can absolutely disrupt your circadian rhythms. You'll even notice that animals are very affected by these energies. Children are very affected by these energies. They do wreak havoc on our systems, and not necessarily in terrible ways, but we can absolutely be struggling with insomnia or feelings of panic and anxiety, headaches, nausea. So don't be surprised if, October 14th, 15th, you just get hit with like a wave of nausea. It's not uncommon with eclipse energy. Now, don't make that a self-fulfilling prophecy either. Don't focus on it, but I just want to mention it so that you don't freak out if you feel a little wonky with the eclipse. And again, that will not be the same for everybody, okay? So check your chart and see where 21 degrees of Libra falls. And that is this eclipse. I think I covered it all. I'm sure I forgot something, but hopefully that was enough for you. Take really good care. And I will be back soon. Oh, and that's another thing. We also have a lunar eclipse October 28th. We have a full moon lunar eclipse in the sign of Taurus. And this will be the last eclipse we will see on the Taurus and Scorpio axis for some years. So I'm going to come back with more information on that. One thing I do want to mention, which I actually did not mention, is that in the birth chart for the United States of America, yes, every country, every city, every state has a birth chart. Obviously, for the United States, it's the Sibley chart, which is what astrologers will use, which is the birth chart for July 4th, 1776, which was signed which is cast for 5:10 p.m. in Philadelphia. That's the chart that's used to chart the astrology of the United States. Pluto is back at almost the exact, just off by minutes, exact place he was back when the United States was formed. In the second house of the world, finances, economics, resources, values. So again, just another marker of the magnitude of these times. Take really good care of yourselves, and I will be back soon with the information on the lunar eclipse. But just know, like I wrote in the blog, October of this year is a preview into 2024. Just trust that. Okay, take care. Bye.